Hey, what is up, guys? Dustin here with Life by the Horns, and today I've got Mr. Nick from Rise Athletic Performance with me. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing really well, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing really well, really well. I kind of wish that we were recording this while we were at lunch because I think there was a lot of good that came out of it, but I think we'll touch on a little bit of that today. So I know earlier this year we talked about this, but I know it's really coming to fruition now. Tell me a little bit about the new project that you're working on for recovery.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So we are starting a subsidiary to Rise called WDR. And WDR stands for We Do Recover. And the main concept behind it is to bridge the gap and study the effects on physical fitness, management of health markers, and having the body in homeostasis plus habit stacking, and how that would have an effect on recovery rates in people who are struggling with alcohol addiction or drug addiction. And the premise behind it is we have the understanding that one of the main things that gets manipulated and shut down while using drugs is serotonin. Yeah. Right. It typically doesn't turn on for about 14 months. So from the fitness side of it, yeah, I know.
14 months after.
14 months after, right?
Holy cow.
So we also understand that 95% of serotonin is housed in the gut. So what most people recovering from an addiction do when they come out of their active addiction is they lean into sugar and caffeine because the sugar has the same effect on the brain from a dopamine and serotonin release that drugs do. So we are going to study the same system that we use at Rise as we put it into effect for somebody that is coming out of addiction. So right now, in year one, the survival rate is 8% for somebody who's coming out of active addiction. So that means that they have an 8% chance of recovery in the first year. National statistic, right? So less than 1 out of 10 people survive. Once they pass year one, and I'm going to round about these, it's somewhere around like 20%, depending on where you look. And then after you make it past year 3, it goes up to 85%. Wow. So what we will prove is that by having your body in homeostasis, making sure that you have a proper structure and schedule, making sure you have nutritious food to eat and proper gut health, and then also habit stacking, and then having a certain amount of activity to force serotonin into your body and having the right support system around you will increase the rate of recovery in year 1, year 2, and year 3. So we've partnered with a group called Reboot Jackson, which is one of the largest RCOs or recovery community organizations in Georgia, to help us put this study on. We filed for a federal grant so that we can scholarship a certain number of people to a certain subset of people so that we can do the study. And from there, the plan is to launch it as the first federally funded coaching group that will, like I said, bridge that gap. So it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, that's very cool. So for those who don't know what serotonin is, what does it actually do to you?
It is your happy drug.
Okay.
Right. So that is the easiest way to put it. Serotonin is released and it gives you that sense of dopamine and serotonin are released and they control your pain tolerance and your sense of happy. Right. So when you come out of an active addiction, you have zero pain tolerance because since you have been using something exogenously to produce those hormones, your natural hormones will shut down. Right. And it takes a certain amount of time for it to turn back on. It's very similar to if you were to use any type of exogenous testosterone or anything, you shut down. Yeah. So when somebody comes out of addiction or active addiction, rather, they will have an entire world looking down on them because they destroyed their credit. They destroyed all of their relationships. And they will have an abundance of shame and trying to work through those things. If you couple that with having a poor physical prowess, not feeling good all the time, then also having no pain tolerance and no way to regulate your body's happy hormone, it makes it, you're basically Sisyphus. Okay. At the time. You're pushing a very, very large boulder up a hill. And even if you do get it to the top, it's going to fall back to the bottom.
Is that why, at least in my experience watching others, so many people go to these 90-day programs, they get out and within a couple of days they're back in it because they don't have all of these habits and positive things they've learned in a structure?
Correct. Yeah. So when you go away and whenever you look at residential treatment, it can range anywhere from 30 days to 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there's a huge gap, and nobody really knows what the right answer is. But what we feel the right answer is that there isn't one, right? There's no direct pathway or no one pathway to being in recovery. So, but what we do know is what we've seen from a discipline standpoint, a support standpoint, and a habit stacking standpoint. So what we teach is, instead of worrying so much about, okay, go to meetings, don't drink in between meetings, or go to meetings and don't use drugs between meetings, we try to focus on, okay, let's put habits in place that will make you a more successful human being while we are healing all the damage that happened to your body, so that your body starts to act like it should. You do feel good. You do have mental clarity. You do start to put some of the weight on. You do start to build some self-confidence. You don't have any type of brain fog. And if we can turn your happy drug on faster, you actually have a good chance at survival, because what most people use drugs for, alcohol for, is to run from something or as an escape. So if we can make life more successful, more palatable, and more understandable, you'll actually want to live your life.
Okay. I like it. Is the program itself going to be an actual center that people go to, or is it more of a hybrid type model where they're coming in and out of it, or what is it actually going to look like?
So the portion that we will run will be an online platform,
okay,
where we have an app that is developed. You'll have a specific structure and schedule that you will follow on a day-to-day basis. And I'll give you an example. The first thing that most people do when they get into recovery is they'll go to an AA meeting or an NA meeting or something like that. And they'll say, okay, get a sponsor and you will do a 90 and 90. And what a 90 and 90 is 90 meetings in 90 days.
Okay.
It is a certain level of accountability that you'll end up going and following through. And most people, like if you're in drug court or something like that, you will have a sheet that needs to be signed off on, like a report card that you have to turn in. So that's one habit. We know that it's a successful habit, so we schedule that, right? Making sure that you drink a certain amount of water from a cellular level is great. So we'll schedule that. We also know that from faith-based programs is a huge proponent, having a higher power or something to lean on.
Yeah.
So schedule those things. So we are literally going to take all of the best practices from every walk and every angle within the recovery field and put a little bit of it into an online platform, and then make sure that we are managing the physical things that they are doing. So it's like, okay, I will manage it online, but I also have access to know if you went to this meeting because I know the person you're supposed to be there. If you're supposed to be in an intensive outpatient program, I know if you're going to that thing. If you're supposed to be on a particular type of medication that is going to help curb your cravings, make sure that even if you wanted to go and use, the effect would not be there as a safety net. We're going to make sure that we have those things in place, and we have the partners reporting back to us that those things are happening. So having those accesses and knowing what we know from each program, we are going to stack it all in a place where the data can be collected, and we can prove that if the adherence rate is here, your rate of survival goes to here. And that's the most important thing. When you can show that to families or show that to an individual, the likelihood, because you have proof that it'll increase their chances of recovery, the likelihood that they follow is higher.
Yeah. Cool. So why do you think it is? So I've met a lot of really great people, and some that have been sober for a really long time. What do you think it is that triggers that self-sabotage or mechanism for them to be up here and all of a sudden make that decision to go way back down here?
In my experience, there's a misconception that time heals all wounds. It's very incorrect. Time heals all clean wounds. So the wounds and the trauma that caused the original reason for escape are typically not dealt with, right? So they will get into the systems. They will understand that if I do this, it equals this, and it becomes very results oriented.
Yeah.
But as soon as a storm hits, and there's no way to quantify those results, that thing that you locked in the closet will pop back up. And if you do not have the skill set and you have not dealt with that thing, you'll go right back. And when you go back, since you haven't dealt with it and it's been constantly being fed one way or another or avoided, it comes back worse. So It's like having a monster locked in a closet. It'll get hungrier and hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. And then when the door opens up, it's not good. You got to get rid of the monster, right? So in my experience, that's what it's been. It's you have to go back. And again, everybody's view on it's a little bit different. You know, some people, it's a faith-based program. God heals all. I don't disagree, but it's not the only way. Some people, Western medicine. Okay. Yeah. MAT programs are great. That's medically assisted programs. They're awesome. Cognitive behavioral therapy. That's the one that I like to lean on most, which is the system is broken. Where did the system break? Go address why it is broken. Let's go find out. Like, let's get the resources together. Were you sexually abused as a child? Okay, this is going to be painful for a little while we work through that. Yeah. But once we're done, that has no power over you anymore. Therefore, you do not need to escape from it. Therefore, there's no real reason to use the alcohol and drugs. And if you get a craving, the craving isn't matched also by trying to hide from something. So it just eliminates one of those factors.
Okay. So other than the fact that this is a super great thing to be a part of, is there any reason why it seems to mean so much to you?
Yeah. So it is me, right? So I am unfortunate. Well, I don't want to say unfortunately, because I've grown to the point now where I am very happy that I have gone through everything that I have gone through. Yeah. But from the age of probably 23, 24, I went through some things that were less than optimal for anybody. I watched my little sister die. I watched my family crumble. I lost all my money. I was supposed to get married. My fiance left me like a month before the wedding. I mean, 2008, 2009 hit and just collapsed everything. And I took the next, I want to say 7-8 years, and I just lit the world on fire. I lived that life, but I was predispositioned to have the capability to do those things. So I had things in my prior life where I had, well, not in my prior life, but prior and early in my life where I didn't have a lot of self-worth. I had self-worth based on results. Like, hey, if I get straight A's, I get this. If I hit 3 home runs, I get this. Yep. If this, then that. So my self-worth was predicated on what I could do. And when I was no longer producing results, there was no sense of identity. And to run from no sense of identity, I used drugs because I could be whatever I wanted to be at the time. Either that or I could avoid whatever somebody was telling me that I was. So throughout the years, I had done a bunch of different programs. You know, I did the detoxes. I did cognitive behavioral therapy. I did axiom-based. I did faith-based programs. I even did a Scientology program, which I didn't know when I got there.
That's so,
and I will tell you that some of the self-help stuff in the beginning is phenomenal until you figure out it's Scientology and what the back end of it is. And then you're like, wait a second, this is weird. But I say all that to say I went through all of the different programs. I completely understand the struggle, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like, I wouldn't wish it on anybody's family to have to watch what addiction can do to a loved one. It'll literally tear a family apart. My family still does not look at me the same, and I'm a very successful man. My brothers and sisters will never look at me the same. It is something that I have to bear. So I understand what it's like to wake up in the morning and there's a very long list of things I have to do, and there's nothing that I want. I have a very firm understanding of waking up and being able to hug my kids and kiss my wife and still feel empty. I have a very firm understanding of what it's like to make an absurd amount of money and still go drink. I've had every purpose in the entire world put in front of me where it's like, your life should be perfect. You have the house, you have the cars, you have the family, you have the support network, you've got beautiful children, you have every reason to be blessed. And I just felt horrible. And since I know what that feels like, and I know what it also feels like to be on the other end of it, I want nothing more than to show people that it's not just about surviving, that you can literally be as successful as you want to be if you go back and you address the things that happened and you work on those things, and you do the painful work. Like me sitting with myself and examining, okay, here are all the things I've done. I won't hide any of it. Like, imagine trying to sit down and explain to people that the piece of jewelry that your sister wore when she was in her casket, you stole so that you could pawn it. Like, that's shame. That is a level of shame that, like, you can't imagine. Like trying to tell your parents that you did that, and your brothers and sisters, knowing you'll never be forgiven, but it's a part of what you need to do. Sitting in that spot and saying, okay, I did this. I own these things. And then also trying to build proof that you are not that thing.
Yeah.
Right. So having gone through that process and having found my faith and having leaned on Jesus to help me and having found other people that aren't just like me, but love regardless, like that unconditional love, being able to teach that is a possibility so that less kids die and that less families are ripped apart. There is no higher calling. Like, I understand that at this point that I was supposed to go through these things. The way that I was built from birth was to set me up to go through those things so that all of the talents and God-given things that I was very blessed enough to have put in me, I can use, because they're like, the gifts are not mine. They were placed in me. So I'm able to be able to use those things for what they were meant to be given to me for. I'm very happy about, and I'm very blessed. Whereas before I wouldn't tell anybody. I always tried to hide. Like, at all my past companies, nobody ever knew that I drank. No one ever knew I did drugs. And I would just try to assimilate and be like, they'll never find out. Everything will be fine. And then they do.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want anybody to have to live that life.
How did you feel in those moments, though, of they'll never find out? I mean, there had to be some sort of, deep down, some sort of shame or something associated with that.
Yeah. Not being authentic is very heavy. Right. Like, putting on a mask every single day.
Yeah.
Like, and I think everybody does it to a degree. You create your own avatar and you're like, okay, everybody can believe that this thing is real. Right. And then you have to try to uphold that. And it's very, very hard because you never get to say what you actually feel. Right. You never get to express how sad or lonely you may be. Not that anybody actually cares, but it would be good to be able to be authentic. So constantly living, knowing that it's all fake is hard, because for all of us, like, you just want to be loved for who you are, not for what you do.
Yeah. Well, and that's not what society tends to praise, at least in Western civilization. It's all status-based things and whatnot, because that's all we talk about and that's all we post online.
Of course, it's all a highlight reel. Yeah. But if you look at anybody that's got the highest status, they're all screwed up.
Yeah.
And then they'll all say the same thing. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here. Like, some of the favorite people that I ever listened to, Jordan Peterson, he struggled with alcohol, right? Or alcohol and pills, I think.
Yeah. And drugs. And
everything. Yeah. Like, the depths of his consciousness got him in trouble because he couldn't express it. Yeah. You know, if you look at Ryan Stewman, he's another one. I don't remember if it was Grant Cardone that, was it Grant? No. But if you look at a lot of these, these famous people, they struggled because, like, your brain is wired very, very differently. And you have the propensity to do great things.
You talked about a lot of the damage that you did during a certain period of time. And obviously, drugs and alcohol were involved. But do you believe that a lot of people go down the road of pursuing drugs and alcohol because they've just got a lot of trauma and demons buried deep down inside that they've just never dealt with?
I think that is one of the major reasons. And then a lack of skill sets to just kind of understand, to accept life on life's terms. Right. So if you think of the saying that ignorance is bliss, that means not knowing a bunch of things and not seeing a bunch of things would make you happy.
Right.
Right. Because you're oblivious. But imagine what the exact opposite of that is. it would be an overwhelming attention to detail and not being able to let anything go. And then if you don't have the skill set to organize those thought patterns and stay focused, life would become very overwhelming.
Right.
So when you look at people with ADHD, they're more prone to addiction. If you look at people that want to be hyper performers, the three traits of a hyper performer, and this is not an original thought, it's from Alex Hormozy. Just want to make sure I say that. The first one is a superiority complex. So you feel that you can set these ridiculous goals that nobody else will understand, and you can actually obtain them. The second one is massive crippling insecurities. So you can either say that that's trauma, or you can say it's what I was talking about earlier. You're only useful until you're not, right? It's all results oriented. If I do this thing, I will get attention and I will feel good, but I'm only as good as my last performance.
Yep.
That is that's an insecurity, right? And then the last one is impulse control. I see it, I do it. But unfortunately, if you have ADHD, you see a whole bunch of stuff and you try to go and you do all of it. And because if you look at the loop that it creates, if I can set massive goals that take a long time to achieve, but then I also have ADD, which means I look at everything and I try to systemize everything. That means I'm going to open up a bunch of loops that take a long time to close. And I'm going to switch from loop to loop in pursuit of doing them always, right? So I'll spend 2 hours on this loop, then I'll get distracted and I'll spend 2 hours on this loop. Then I get distracted and you keep going and you keep going until eventually you are burned out. You are stressed out. You are not sleeping. You're not taking care of yourself. There's such an overwhelming amount of noise in the world and inside of your brain.
You remember where we were?
I think so. You're talking about having a bunch of loops open.
Oh.
I believe, right?
ADD, doing all the things.
Yep.
And then I think it's already going off.
Well, that's okay. Well, are we still recording?
Actually, we're still recording. So, yeah.
Okay. So I don't know exactly where I left off. We are having a lot of technical difficulties at this point. But basically, you open up a bunch of loops. All right. And as you're working through these loops, you never complete absolutely anything. But you don't turn off. All right. So as you go through, you're not sleeping because nothing's being completed. And if you are a hyper performer, you have to complete tasks. So you have all these open loops, right? It's like, I have this system, I have this system, I have this system. And what you do is you constantly just keep driving. And superficially, it makes you feel like you're completing things, which is why you make a bunch of checklists and you're checking boxes, but you get no fulfillment. You've talked about this before.
Right.
And then you run into the point where you're overwhelmed.
Yep.
You're underappreciated. You feel neglected. You feel sad. The world becomes a very noisy place, right? Inside of your own head. It's like, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And we all know a way to turn it off. It's like, hey, if I drink this, I don't feel that anymore.
Yeah.
And you don't even actually chase the effect of the alcohol, right? You chase the relief. Mm-hmm. And that's what gets everybody. Yeah. It's not, oh, I love alcohol. No, you don't. Alcohol tastes terrible. It makes you feel absolutely awful.
It's the numbness.
Yeah. It's if I drink enough of this, it stops. It's quiet. I used to go and speak at rehabs, and I used to refer to it as the exhale. Right. Mm. So certain people are built a certain way. You can run your 9 to 5. It could be the worst day in the world. You come home, you open the door, your kids come running up to you. You grab your kid, and all of a sudden you just go, everything goes away. There are certain people that are built without the ability to do that thing. And the first time they find alcohol, or the first time they find a drug, whether unbeknownst to them, it could have been like my first opiates were from the dentist. But I just remember, as soon as that onset hit, I was calm.
Yeah.
I didn't care about anything. I didn't care what any of y'all thought. I turned into a superhuman, right? I could take on all things. It energized me. Like mental clarity was all there. And it was just because since I didn't care about everything else, I was able to hyper focus. So you end up getting caught in that trap. You go. And then you need relief. Some people, it's every Friday. Then it becomes every Friday, Saturday. Then it becomes, hey, when I get home from work, I don't want alcohol. I want the relief. Like I want my brain to turn off. And that's how the habit develops. And then once the habit is developed, then the physical dependency comes in. But it all starts not with something that you have. It starts with something that you are missing.
Yeah.
Right. And Alex Hormozy talks about it a lot. Champions are broken. Everybody's looking for something they have that you don't. And that's not the way it works. They don't have something that you do possess. You possess an off switch. I don't. My manual turn off was drink a lot.
Yeah.
And that would shut the system down. Right. So that's where I see most of it. You either have trauma that you're hiding from, or you have a hole that you are trying to fill with stuff and things where you are seeking relief from the chaos that you caused.
Yeah.
And when you find it, you will not let go of it. And that's why a lot of hyper successful men, they struggle with those things.
Yeah. From your experience, do you see that a lot of, at least men that I know that have been an addict of any shape or form, a lot of them transition to some sort of other, we'll call it healthy addiction, especially bodybuilding being one. A gentleman that I used to work out with back in the day, I mean, he was 20 years into drugs and prison and everything else, and he got out clean, super great guy. But I mean, working out was his new drug. Do you see that a lot in people?
I believe that it's one of the healthiest things that you can do. Everyone, like I've always heard that old saying, like, oh, you don't want to replace one habit with another. Yes, you do. Like if you drink soda, replace it with water.
Yeah.
Like, you do. Like if you are a serial cheater on your wife, replace it with monogamy. That's a habit. That's a commitment. Like everything in life is habits. So I don't want to hear, oh, you're trading an unhealthy habit for a healthy habit. Absolutely, I am. I don't care what you feel my obsessive compulsive personality is. I am not doing drugs anymore. So I went from being like, hey, I need to do this thing to, yes, I do need to take care of myself. I know the way I'm programmed and it keeps me safe, but I see it all the time. And it's something now that they're actually starting to teach. If you have a set of 50 habits that are all bad, you need to replace each one of those habits with something good. And you don't do it all at once. You just do it over a period of time. And the swing from that is 100 habits, right? So if you look at somebody who wants to get in shape, I don't need you to do everything all at once. It's like, hey, do me a favor, drink 80 ounces of water. Do that for a week. Then next week, I want you to give up soda because now you're drinking the water. That's 2 habits. You gave up one, you gained one, right? Then the next week, hey, let's cut back on the condiments. Then the next week, hey, let's try to eat all whole foods. Then the next week, if you go to the end of a year and you gain 52 good habits and you release 52 not optimal ones, it's a 104 habit swing. Why would you not want to do that? When you look at addiction, it's like, okay, here is a list of unsuccessful actions. You can give them all up, but you won't go anywhere. Yeah. You'll just stop. If you replace all of the habits with something that'll make you successful, you'll become a successful human being. You use the same amount of energy that you were using to destroy your life to go and create something. It's not enough to just stop, in my opinion. So yes, I see it. I never stopped eating out of Tupperware containers, even when I was using drugs. Those basic disciplines never left. Yeah. And when I wanted to enhance my life, when everything did stop, the first thing I did was say I was going to do a bodybuilding show. And guess what? I did a bodybuilding show. Whenever anything continues to get hard in my life, when it got hard in 2020, I did a bodybuilding show. Let me get my disciplines in order. It's not about bodybuilding. It's about the disciplines, the goal setting, the perseverance, the vision. It's all about those things, the consistency, going through your day to day with a plan. That is what bodybuilding is. I could care less about the show. It's the structure. Yeah. Same thing in 2022. Did it then. Anytime life gets hard and I feel chaotic, the easiest thing for me to do is go back to something that I know that is planned, structured, and pursue that thing. When I was pursuing my walk with Christ, started in 2022. As I was going through the 26-week discipleship, I was in prep all 26 weeks because it was all programmed. So I do see that a lot. And I think it's awesome. Everybody did it. Like, again, if you look at some of the most hyper successful Instagram famous people, Wes Watson is a good example. He was in prison, came out of prison. He used his physique and certain daily disciplines that started with his physique to become extremely successful. Justin Waller does the same thing. The first thing he will ever do every single day for the rest of his life is work out. Andrew Tate, the first thing he will ever do every single day is work out. I don't care if you believe it or not. Some of the most hyper successful humans in the world, that's what they do, right? They have a plan.
So, and I agree with that. I also believe, though, that it's not for everybody.
Correct.
So walk me through something that, I have struggled with, which is temperance.
Okay. Are you talking about how to obtain it?
Not maybe how to obtain it, but what the importance of it. Because for me, yes, I love the disciplines and everything, but if I fall off and fail one thing, the carnage that it creates inside of me, and even like the last meal plan that you gave me had corn tortillas on it. I'm like, Nick, I'm not eating corn tortillas and you're like, no, you need to learn temperance.
Yes, I did say that to you. And the way I define temperance is middle ground, right? It's having an understanding that not everything is good and not everything is bad. And it doesn't have to be either or. There is a way to just live a happy, sustainable life, even inside of bodybuilding. That's why there's in season and off season, right? Yeah. So anybody, and I'll just use you as an example. You are either 100% systemized or 100% a train wreck. And that's a lot of people, but
thank you for that.
Hey, it is what it is, man. You're also a hyper successful human being, right? The thing that makes you great is also a hindrance.
Right.
That's literally everybody. It's one choice away. Same thing, heroes and villains, same backstory.
Yeah.
Right. One says the world hurt me, I'm going to hurt it back. The other one says the world hurt me, I'm going to prevent it from hurting anybody else. It's just one decision. Yeah. Right. But if you look at creating temperance, it all comes down to having an education, right? You don't need to be all into something to get results. Being all in yields fast results. And in a world full of efficiencies, that's what you and I tend to lean on. But if you can take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, not 75 days.
Yeah.
So that kind of changes the bar. It's okay, if I have the rest of my life to work on this, what plan can I put in place that will get me the type of incremental results over a longer period of time that I can stick to? Maybe it's not working out 6 days a week. Maybe it's, I know I can stick to 3, and I can stick to 3 and I can go on a date night every 13 days. I won't lose 30 pounds in 90 days, but after 90 days, I will look much better and I can continue to do that thing. But it's the way of the world, right? Everybody wants it faster. But if you learn, especially with this, it doesn't end. You never arrive. Same thing with business. You're not all in and all out with business. You're always all in, right? It's like, it's a long-term play. So you got to treat it the same way. And I was the same way a long time ago. It was like, I'm either in prep or I'm just completely out of shape, right? Now it's, I know what eating healthy looks like. I know what my range is. I know where I want my weight to throttle from. I want to be from 215 to 225. Right now I'm 223. So guess what? I know that I got to tighten the reins up just a little bit. Not a big deal. If it was, I have to be 215 all the time, it would drive you absolutely crazy, right? And you'd go off the rails, right? So I say all that, I guess, to say is that move the benchmark, change the expectation, and have a different understanding of what your actual goal is.
Okay. Right? So
long-term play.
Have the goal, but maybe give yourself a little grace.
Yeah. Build grace into the goal.
Yeah.
Right. If it's a longer term goal, it's not going to be as restrictive. Right. Same thing with your investment strategies. Like, you don't pull all of your money out when the market goes down, right? It's like, oh my God, this didn't work. Pull everything. And nobody does that.
Yeah.
There will be ups. There will be downs. Is my strategy sound?
Yeah.
If you have a sound strategy, you can do this for forever. And it isn't that hard. You just have to stay within what the strategy is and build it properly.
Yeah.
Same thing with your marketing strategies.
Right.
Right. So that would be a key point of advice is
You don't just turn it on and it's just.
Yeah. Well, there's 3 barriers to learning.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something I learned out in California. I may have talked to you about this before. Right. So the first barrier to learning is an absence of mass. And the best example I can give to you with that is if I were to sit here and tell you how to build a car engine and there's no car engine in front of you, what are the chances of you learning that? 0.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Right. The second one is the misunderstood word. If I listen to certain people like Jordan Peterson, when he speaks sometimes, I don't understand what he's saying. Therefore, I cannot gather the concept, which means I cannot learn what he's saying to me. You got to dumb it down a little bit, right? So a misunderstood word is a second barrier to learning. If somebody's speaking at a higher level than what you can comprehend, you're not going to learn the subject matter.
Right.
The third one is too steep of gradient. That is January 1st for everyone. They start off like, it is January 1st, new year, new me. Gallon of water every single day, hour of cardio. I'm eating salads, baby. Let's go, right? And then by March, no one is doing anything except for paying for a gym membership for the next 2 years to try again next January.
Yeah.
It's because you start off with too much. It is an all in, all out mentality that is not sustainable and it is miserable.
Yeah.
So you put the thing in place, like I said before. This month, I will do this thing. Next month, I will stack this thing. The following, I will stack the next. And I will set the target for a year instead of 12 weeks. I will set the target for 2 years instead of by summer, I need to be shredded. How about we just do the thing and get a little bit of education and kind of slowly do it? Because you can walk on an incline like this forever. This, you got a very short period of time before you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this stuff.
Fair enough. Well, going full circle with We Do Recovery, when do you guys have an anticipated launch date, or is that a ways down the road?
Oh, it is not a ways down the road. So we are in the process of having the website built, which is good. The federal grant was submitted a couple of months ago, so we should get word back to see if we get the funding. I'm hoping this month or next month we'll hear back.
Okay.
And then it would be great. And I'm very vague with this because I don't understand how the government operates with it or is going to operate with the opioid relief fund and how they're going to send out the money or when. It would be great to get the funding by January so that I can fully launch. Behind the scenes, I've already kind of launched it. I've been lucky enough to where Lloyd has allowed me to bring certain people into the program already, and I'm already doing checkups. I've already sent, I think, 6 or 7 people out to residential treatments. I do have addiction recovery habits built into the system that we use now that I assign, and I do have the partners of the different RCOs that we're going to be with inside of the program already, and we are studying the effects on their recovery. Awesome. So as of right now, it's going really, really well as long as the people adhere to the plans.
Yeah.
Right. The missing link is when they don't, what is the next level of accountability for it? Right. So I had one person in particular who was or 2 people who were unable to adhere to the plan, which I kind of knew going in because they didn't have the foundation set. I knew that the things were going to happen, and to be of service to them, I had already called ahead to different residential treatments. So as soon as it didn't work, I was able to get them out of the state, get them into a treatment program so that they didn't damage their lives. Mm. So it's just pooling resources right now. So I do have somebody out in Kentucky who has access to all of the different insurance platforms and all of the different recovery programs across the country based on your insurance, who's always waiting. We've gone to the different police precincts who have their different programs set up for different police officers who struggle. We're starting to build that relationship there. And then we have all the RCOs. I've gone and gotten certified as a certified addiction recovery empowerment specialist, certified peer specialist in addictive diseases. So the foundation is already there and it's already kind of operating, but the full launch will happen as soon as the government does all. Yeah. Like, here's the money for the thing. Because at the end of the day, what we want to be of service and make sure that at least the beginning portions of the programs are funded by the state so that we can get people into it.
Fair enough. Well, Nick, I love the mission of what you're trying to do. Had a great time chatting today. It's always great having you out here. Guys, Life by the Horns, thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
See you next time.